All right, going to call the order the meeting for September 20th, 2022. Ms. Simonson, can you call the roll?
Yes. Okay, council members present and establishing a quorum: Fulcher, Kenny, Hanford, Davis, Gamble, Fisher, and Scarborough.
All right, then Councilmember Kinney, lead us in the pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item of business is item 4. We have final action. Obviously, the 13th meeting was canceled because lack of a quorum, because we had a lot of people in Washington, D.C. lobbying. So if 4.1 waive council rules of procedure to allow for final action at the meeting, Ms. Wyckoff?
Yes, we just need a motion to waive procedure so we can take action tonight and hold a business meeting at the same time as the study session.
All right.
please.
Councilmember Kinney.
I move to waive council rules of procedure section 3.1.3 to allow for final action to be taken at a study session and to hold a business meeting and study session on Tuesday, September 20, 2022.
Hanford seconds.
Been motioned by Councilmember Kinney, seconded by Councilmember Hanford. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We all 7 here. Yeah, 7-0. All right, next item that we have on the agenda is public comments. This time is set aside for the public to speak to the city council on any issue related to the city of Monroe, except any quasi judicial matter subject to a public hearing. 3 minutes will be allowed per speaker. If you are attending the meeting virtually using the link or number provided above, please indicate that you would like to speak by clicking the raise hand, and the mayor pro tem will call on attendees to speak at the appropriate time. If you are joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Written comments can be emailed to Ms. Wyckoff at monroewa.gov and must be received by 4 p.m. the day of the meeting pursuant to council rules of procedure, when comments will not be read into the record and will be forwarded to council members. I do have one sign in. Robin Hayashi. Ms. Hayashi, come forward, state your name and area of residence for the record.
Hi, I'm Robin Hayashi. I'm a resident of Monroe, right here in town. Can I just get started?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Robin Hayashi, and I'm here representing the more than 330 members of the Monroe Education Association. And we stand in solidarity with our interim superintendent, Marcy Larson, the school board, and the administrators and other staff of the Monroe School District. I'm grateful for the chance to speak in front of you tonight as you prepare to listen to the MSD presenters and discuss passing a resolution in support of our renewal levy. I'm nervous. I speak in front of people all day long, but I'm nervous. In reflecting on what I should say to you as you prepare to vote on a resolution, I thought about all of the great things that happen in schools every day in our district. Activities and experiences that are at risk if we do not pass this renewal levy. I think about Mrs. Bannon's sewing class at PPMS, who created 3D stuffy versions of monsters that were created by Miss Plessa's first grade artists. I'm also reminded of the horticulture class at Leaders High School, who plant and maintain the community green spaces on their campus, and of Frank Wagner's collaborative community garden, which supplies fresh veggies to our families. There is also the student from Miss Nowesky's writing class at Hidden River, who wrote a poem that was so stunning that it was featured on the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction's website for the state. And I think of our students who have learned to write computer code beginning at the elementary level, who feed into our secondary schools ready to build on those skills. Did you know that the MHS robotics team competed at the state level last year, which was a first for that team? Chain Lake has a broadcasting class that teaches students how to write, edit, and record their own newscasts complete with teleprompters. There are community spaces in the MHS library that invite students to linger and which creates new opportunities for friendships and hands-on learning. MHS was inspired to transform their homecoming royalty selection into an incredible opportunity to raise money and give back to our community. Our classrooms are intentionally becoming more inclusive places for students with IEPs, allowing kids to access grade level classes, equating to new levels of success. We had a record number of scholarships awarded to seniors last year, and our graduation rates are on the rise. We are succeeding in Monroe, but we need your support to keep this going. We have to keep up the good work for our kids' sake. I think about something distressing that Director Campbell said recently. If this renewal levy doesn't pass, everything we know in our district will be negatively impacted to some degree. Our good work will be interrupted. I'm going to wrap it up. I have one more paragraph. I'd like to urge you and anyone listening tonight to remember the examples I've provided of the incredible learning that happens here and how it benefits our community as a whole. Please lend your support and do everything you can to help pass our renewal levy. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the city council in the chambers? In the chambers? Okay, we have an online. All right. All right, I see Ms. Lockhart has been brought into the meeting, the virtual meeting. Ms. Lockhart, state your name and area of residence for the record, then you'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha, loud and clear.
All righty. My name is Melanie Lockhart and my family of 5 lives here in Monroe in the Frylands. I am also a mother of 3 and 2 of them are current students in the Monroe School District this year. Additionally, I have taken on the volunteer role of chairman of the Citizens for Monroe Schools Committee, and it has been a pleasure just doing work on that here in the last few months in preparation for the upcoming levy that's on the November ballot. I want to thank the mayor and city council for including a levy presentation on tonight's agenda. And I really hope that you will consider and ultimately pass a resolution here with the city. And I hope the information you hear tonight will illustrate just how vital it is to not only the children attending our public schools, but to the community as a whole that this critical renewal levy passes in November. And remember, it is a renewal. So to vote no is voting to take that money away from our kids. So I am hoping that anybody who is in attendance tonight will vote in November to support this levy. Thank you also to Robin Hayashi for the beautiful words a moment ago from the perspective of our educators. She has highlighted several elements that make Monroe schools beautiful. My kids benefit from these schools, as well as more than 5,500 students who are currently enrolled. So again, thank you for listening tonight. And hopefully we will see you all supporting the levy in November. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have anybody else in the virtual meeting? All right. Seeing no other willing participants, we'll go forward to announcements and presentations. Item 6.1, 2021 fiscal year and federal single audit exit. Ms. Hassert.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gamble. This evening, we have a couple of folks from the State Auditor's Office who will give us our annual exit conference. They came during August and quickly wrapped up this year's audit. We had the fiscal audit and the federal single audit, because we did expend more than $750,000 in federal funds last year. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Kirk and Josie and let them take the show from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Becky. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I just switched over to be a panelist. So hopefully everything all transferred over all right.
We got you. Sure.
Awesome. Good deal. Well, thank you very much for allowing us to come present the results of the 2021 City of Monroe state audit. My name is Kirk Gadboy, and it's been a few years since I've been out at Monroe. I was out there years ago supervising the audit, but it's good to be back is the audit supervisor. And with me today is my coworker, Josie. And Josie was the one who really did all the work on the audit. She served as the audit lead, really doing all of the digging through the financial records of the city and asking lots and lots of questions. Becky and her team, just figuring out, how the operations are at the city and really all that stuff. Just really pleased to be able to share the results of this audit with you. We did prepare a packet of information. I believe that is included in your council packet. And we also have this PowerPoint presentation as well. So really, we have a lot of information in the packet that we sent out to you. It's about 21 pages long, full of all the details, the kind of results of our audit. The PowerPoint is obviously meant to supplement that and just be a little more high level. So feel free to read through that packet. If you have any questions on anything in there, feel free to reach out to me. The information's not been published yet. It's going to be published next week. So there's lots of time before it gets published if you have any questions of anything. But with that, before we talk about the results of the audit, if you want to go to the next slide there, we'll go ahead and talk about just about who we are and just as an office, just as a reminder, because a lot of times we're only out here about once a year, and there might be some new faces in the crowd that might not be too familiar with who the state auditor's office is, what we do. But really our goal is to, we audit all governments in the state of Washington. So whether it's the state of Washington itself, down to every single county, city, fire district, library district, school district, mosquito district, and the red raspberry district, everyone that gets taxpayer money, we audit those governments. And basically what we do is just make sure that, government's doing what it's supposed to do. And if there's any areas of improvement we can point out, we will do that as well. But that should help increase that trust in government, just knowing that there is an independent office that comes out and does those reviews of all government in Washington state. Along with that, though, not only do we like to, would point out any areas of recommendations we have, but because we do audit all governments in the state of Washington, it allows us to see best practices around the state as well. So if we notice a best practice in a certain system, maybe in a city in Eastern Washington or Southern Washington, Vancouver, whatever, if we notice a best practice, something that some city is doing really well, we might try to incorporate that in our audit of your city as well. And then that way helps just improve safeguards over public funds and resources. So we try to be that assistance as well. But anyways, enough of that. We'll talk about the results of the city's audit this year. As Becky mentioned, we did perform a financial statement audit and also a federal grant compliance audit for fiscal year 2021. And we'll have a draft report to share with you. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Josie, and she can kind of walk through the results of that financial and federal audit.
Thanks, Kirk. Good evening, everyone. So I'm happy to deliver the results of the audit to you now that we're finished. So we'll start with the financial statement audit. This audit covered the period of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. So when we perform a financial statement audit, our objective is to issue an opinion as to whether or not the financial statements can be relied upon by users to make decisions. We are pleased to report that we are issuing an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements, which means that the audit resulted in the best possible outcome, which is a clean report that provides reasonable assurance that the financial statements are presented fairly and are free from material misstatement. So you may notice on this slide that we are also issuing an adverse opinion on US GAAP. The city is receiving this opinion because they prepare the financial statements using the cash basis method of reporting, which is a method other than US GAAP, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. So the cash basis is authorized under the state of Washington's Budgeting, Accounting, and Reporting System, or the BARS manual, and is actually used by the majority of local governments across the state due to its simplified reporting requirements and is totally allowable for use. However, national standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA, requires the auditor to disclose in the report whether a local government chooses to report their financial statements under a different reporting method other than US GAAP, because that is the standard method used for accrual-based accounting in the US. So as a result, we're required to issue this second or dual adverse opinion, but please note that this adverse opinion is routinely issued for governments that use the cash basis method. So it's simply due to that reporting requirement. In other words, this is just a very clean audit, and the adverse opinion on GAAP is really nothing to worry about. Our audits are conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. So those standards require that we gain an understanding of the city's internal controls and its processes that it goes through to prepare the financial statements for audit. If we were to identify any weaknesses or any concerns with the processes that could or did result in any significant errors to the financial statements, we would be required to bring those to your attention and to include that information in our report. But we are pleased to report that we did not identify any such concerns. Auditing standards also require us to consider compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements where non-compliance could affect the fair presentation of the financial statements. So you'll see that the city's report indicates that our audit did not identify any instances of non-compliance. These results can be found on pages 16 through 19 of your packet for the financial audit. So on the next slide, we'll go over any misstatements that we found during the audit. Professional auditing standards require that we share with you whether there are any uncorrected misstatements that remain in the audited financial statements. We are also required to note whether there were any material misstatements that were identified during the audit and subsequently corrected by management. But we are pleased to report there were no uncorrected misstatements and no material misstatements identified during this audit. That's good news. On the next slide, we will discuss the specific risks that we identified related to the financial audit. So we evaluate certain risks during the financial audit. Auditing standards require us to evaluate the possibility that management may be able to override those internal controls, those processes that we spoke about earlier. But we are pleased to share with you that our evaluation showed no instances where controls were overridden by management. On the next slide, we will go over the federal grant audit. So the city also had a federal grant compliance, which is also known as a single audit for the period of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. The objective of the single audit is to determine whether the city materially complied with the requirements of receiving federal funding. We're pleased to report that we are issuing, again, an unmodified opinion on the city's compliance with federal grant requirements. So as I mentioned before, an unmodified opinion is considered a clean opinion. It's the best possible outcome. It provides reasonable assurance that federal funds were expended in accordance with their intended purposes and all federal requirements have been largely followed. Our audits are conducted in accordance with uniform guidance, which establishes administrative requirements for the use of federal funds by non-federal entities and standards for auditing those grants. So these standards require that we gain an understanding of the city's internal controls that it uses to ensure federal grant requirements are followed. If we identify any weaknesses or concerns with those processes that could result in significant non-compliance, it's just like with the financial audit, we'd be required to bring those to your attention. But we're pleased to report that we did not identify any such concerns. For the single audit, you may find the results on pages 13 through 15 of your packet. And on the next slide, we'll go over a few details related to the single audit. When we do our federal grant compliance audits, we select enough federal grant programs to satisfy coverage requirements set by federal guidelines, depending on the risk. In assessing this requirement, we identified one program, the Highway Planning and Construction Cluster. So this cluster includes multiple grants where funds were spent on various projects during the period that all fall under the same federal grant program. This program as a whole represented approximately 99% of the city's total federal expenditures for 2021. As previously discussed, our audit identified no instances where the city was out of compliance with federal requirements for its expenditures of federal funds for this program. So as I said before, it was a very clean audit, and this is all really, positive news. So with that, I will turn it back over to Kirk to give you an update on the city's prior audit findings and begin our wrap up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josie. So on the next slide here, we just have one other document that's going to be published in the audit report. And this is the summary schedule of prior audit findings. As Josie mentioned, in this current audit, that we had no issues, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses in any of the grant work or financial audit work we did. In the prior audit, though, we did identify an issue related to one of the federal grants administered by the city. And so we did report a finding last year related to that grant program. We are pleased to report, though, this is the follow-up to that, and it just shows the corrective actions taken by the city and how it fixed those issues going forward. And we were pleased to report that that corrective action is fully corrected, in our opinion, and that will be published in the audit report. So that's on pages 8 and 9 in your packet. It has the city's response to the finding, just kind of the update of what's been going on since the prior year. So with that, I mean, that's really about all we had for you. Just good things to say, and even more good things here at the entrance conference. As we just initially started the audit, we kind of threw out a ballpark number of what we thought the audit would cost, and we're just pleased to report that we are going to come in about $7,500 under what we anticipated, and largely because we only had to do that one federal program this year, the highway planning construction, and also because a lot of the work was done remotely, so we didn't really have a lot of travel costs out to Monroe either. So $7,500 under budget. It's always nice to be able to give money back to the cities there. The next audit is going to occur in the summer of 2023. That's going to include the same audit we did this year. It's going to be the financial statement and federal program audit for 2022, so the current year activity. But it's also going to include our third audit as well, which is the accountability for public resources. And that's really where we look at the city's compliance with state laws, its compliance with its own policies and procedures, any kind of external rules it has to follow, and just kind of make sure the city is complying with all those different external regulations. So we did include an estimate for that audit in the packet as well. So you can definitely take a peek at that if you like. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our reports are not public yet. They're still in draft form, so you can feel free to read through them. And if you have any questions, reach out to me before they go live. We anticipate these being published to our website on the 29th of this month. So as far as next steps go, we got to work with Becky to file the federal information to the federal government about the federal grant audit, and then this report will come out and be live there. Once it is live, there is a email link that goes out to those couple people in Monroe, and that is just basically a survey. We just want to know how we did, what was useful for you about this audit process, how can we improve our services. Feel free to fill that out and let us know how we're doing. We do take those seriously, so any feedback you might have, we definitely want to hear it. And with that, that's really all we have. I mean, just positive things today. Just lots of clean, unmodified opinion, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses, and just because we don't want to just report negative things or things like that, we just want to also just say thank you to all your city staff who we worked with during the audit. I know talking to Josie, whenever she's working with Becky and all of her finance team, Greg and Sherry and Jamie and Kathy, just everybody was incredibly helpful out there at the city. Yeah, just really helpful and was quick to respond to information. And it was just a breeze because I know a lot of stuff that when Becky provided us records, they were just incredibly well organized and detailed. So it's very easy for us to follow along with what the city was doing. So thank you. Can't say that enough. And we look forward to working with you next year as well. But with that, does anyone have any questions about the audit at all this year, or anything we can help answer this year?
We do have one light, Councilmember Scarborough.
Sure.
No, I'd just like to commend Becky and her staff for her department for all the hard work she does on this. And she always puts us in good stead when we have these. And we appreciate that, Becky. Good job.
Absolutely. All right.
Anybody else? All right. No, I was just going to say the same thing. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. So anytime you get an unmodified opinion, it is just fantastic work. So thank you so much, Becky and staff. It's great.
Thank you all.
And thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, thank you. Have a good evening and yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right. Next item under the agenda under announcements and presentations is 6.2 Monroe School District Levy. Interim Superintendent Dr. Marcy Larson. Welcome.
Or allowing us, do I need to be
We got
closer?
you. It's all lit up now. You're
Oh,
good.
okay, I'm good. Okay, for allowing us some time on your agenda tonight. I'm Dr. Marcy Larson, and I'm the interim superintendent for Monroe School District. So I'm here as an expert after only 5 weeks on the job. And with me tonight, I have the president of our school board of directors, Jennifer Bumpus. You probably know all of these folks already, Director Chuck Whitfield, and Brenda Hunt, our chief financial officer for the school district. And Brenda's going to help me tonight with the presentation. So as you've heard, we have the school district will be asking our voters to renew the school programs and operations levy, and it's on the ballot for November. And we just want to share a little bit about that and obviously allow you plenty of time for questions if you have questions. So who we are, little review. We have 10 schools in Monroe School District, about 5,300 students, 962 employees. We really enjoy a high graduation rate here in Monroe, 90%. And 62% of our teachers have master's degrees. Thinking of Robin back here. We average 19 in our class sizes. Obviously, when we talk about average, some higher, some lower. 40 athletic teams and 46 extracurricular clubs. So we have a lot of reason to celebrate. And here's some pictures for you to enjoy a few highlights. And I have to say, I knew a little bit about your student highlights before I came here to serve as the interim. And that's because in some circles in this neighborhood, I'm also known as Aunt Marcy and Great Aunt Marcy, because I have 5 great nieces and great nephews that are enrolled in schools here, and 2 of my nieces work in the school district. My reason for coming out of retirement was my family. So in Monroe last year, the Monroe High School boys soccer team made state playoffs last year, I understand. First time in over 20 years. Sounds a little like the Mariners, doesn't it? But this year's our year. And they ended up placing 3rd in state. In addition, one of our soccer players was named by the Everett Herald as the boys' soccer player of the year. And one of our girls' softball players was named as softball player of the year. High Q team. I don't know if anyone's ever had the pleasure of observing High Q in action. Seeing a nod here. It's an academic quiz competition that I would never make the team. I assure you, I've watched it. And last year you were named as a 2022 regional champion and earned a spot as one of 4 teams nationwide to move on to the national competition. It is hard. It is really hard. If you ever get an invitation to go and observe, I encourage you to take advantage of that. Kids are amazing that do these things. You also last year had a high school musical production of The Addams Family that earned recognition at the Fifth Avenue Theater Awards. I'm a big fan of musical theater. I've never seen The Addams Family, so I'm kind of bummed that I missed that last year. And I'm going to the Fifth Avenue this Saturday, actually.
Broadway vacation.
Yes, yes. So maybe I'll see you there.
Just
Oh, you did? It's good?
Yep.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Yes, I'm a musical theater fan, so we'll have to compare notes. And our ongoing work district-wide on inclusive practices for our special education students has been recognized by the University of Washington, my alma mater, and OSPI, and we're considered a statewide leader in this work. This work holds a special place in my heart because that's where I started my career, is working with students with special needs as a teacher. So school funding, where does our money come from? The majority, as you can see, comes from the state. And what the state does is they provide funding based on their definition of what a basic education is. And they have a model that they base that on. Of course, I would argue, and you'll see a little bit later in the presentation, that what as a community we expect as basic education goes far above and beyond what Washington state funding provides. Local funding is 14%. That's a lot of money. That's why we need to renew our levy. Federal percentage is obviously low, and it's pretty minuscule for grants and other sources of funding there. So we'll get into some more detail about that in a minute.
Quick question on this
Sure.
slide, though. How does this compare, or grants and other sources, is that pretty consistent across all school districts at the 0.3?
You know, I'm not sure. I'd ask Brenda that. I know the other dollar amounts are pretty consistent. Would you say that's pretty consistent, the grant amounts?
Most of our, they're consistently, it's a calculated formula based on, for most cases, prior year enrollment.
Okay.
So it's a consistent model used how districts will greater enrollment, larger amount.
Yeah.
Percentage to total is
Probably similar. Okay. I've never had that question, so now I know. So just a review on the next slide that local funding, obviously we're looking to renew the levy, and levies are for learning, bonds are for buildings. And that's an easy way to distinguish between the two. With the levy, it requires that it be approved by 50% plus one, a simple majority. Now with the bond, just to remind you, in 2015, you passed a bond in this community, and that funded the complete modernization of Park Place Middle School, Salem Woods, the modernization of Frank Wagner Elementary, and the modernization and expansion of Hidden River Middle School, some turf fields at the high school. Probably have seen that. I know this is a big sports community, and actually some other facility improvements that are ongoing now that are being completed, some of the smaller projects. And I'm going to hand off to Brenda to talk money. There you go.
Good evening. As you heard earlier this evening, this is a renewal levy. A renewal levy is much like a subscription. You pay for the subscription for the whole year. If you don't renew it, you stop receiving the magazines. In this case, the renewal levy is a 4-year levy, and it's a renewal. And if not passed, the levy, the district ceases to receive the tax dollars that provide many of the activities and programs that you've heard about this evening. The levy pays for, and this is pretty standard in all districts, but it pays for our athletics and our activities. The district does not consider those basic education, so we receive no funding from the state for our athletics and our activities programs. It pays for additional teachers above and beyond the prototypical funding model. It pays for school safety and security. For additional school safety and security. It funds a portion of our transportation, our school buses that take students to and from school. It provides additional nurses, counselors, and paraeducators. The state does not fully fund special education, and so the levy pays for a portion of special education. Professional learning for our staff above and beyond the paid learning days that the state is now partially funding. It pays for building operation and maintenance costs, and it also provides materials and supplies for our classrooms. The levy, let's flip to the next slide.
Before we move on, we have a question, if it's okay.
Oh, a green light.
Councilmember Scarborough?
Okay, when you take all these subjects, the school board determines what dollar figure goes to each of those departments?
essentially the school board adopts the budget, and the budget includes the 14% of the levy dollars. And essentially, for example, for transportation, by default, the difference between what the state allocates in their formula for transportation, that by default, the difference between what they fund and what we spend is coming from local resources. And so when the levy, if the levy does not pass, then essentially all the costs for these items go back into our priority list. And then at that point, we have to determine what our district priorities are and reevaluate and put together a budget that works within our resources. However, it won't necessarily be that we reduce special education. We have legal requirements to meet special education rules. So that means something else that we're paying for out of our basic ed resources would have to be reduced as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've been out of transportation for about 10 years, 9. Does the formula that they now have for providing for transportation meet your needs, or is it still difficult?
Well, they use the STARS funding formula for calculating transportation. And as far as I know, the state realizes that that funding formula is not working for school districts. And there has been talk, especially for this upcoming legislative session, to throw away the STARS funding formula and come up with a different model that would more fully fund transportation. However, that has not been developed.
And how long ago was that proposed? To get rid of stars and do something else?
I think it's been going for a couple years. Pre-COVID, we were talking about the STARS funding formula going away. The biggest disadvantage to the STARS funding formula is OSPI can't explain how they're allocating the resources, and the district does not know what our allocation is until February of the year that we're in.
And am I correct that the STARS program started about the year I retired?
Yes,
about
sir.
13?
Yeah. And once we went to converted to the STARS funding formula, our allocation was cut nearly in half. But our costs for transportation have gone up, especially recently in light of fuel costs and the
Thank you.
needs. Yeah. Any other questions on that?
Councilmember Kinney.
Did have a question for you.
Yes,
Thanks for
ma'am.
being here. Appreciate it. Piggybacking on Councilmember Scarborough's comment, is the decision-making the school boards solely, or would the school board, if faced with some of these cuts, go to individual schools and ask administration for their ideas, their input, or is it solely the school board's decision?
It will be the responsibility of the district to propose reductions. And we will, or have promised our community, we've had a very abbreviated budget committee this past year. And it's our intention to put together some sort of budget advisory committee moving forward. And so it will be collectively community members, staff, and possibly board members on that committee to discuss priorities. I can't speak for the community. No individual can speak to the community about priorities. And so we would develop a list of priorities, and the end result would be that list of reductions going to the board for their feedback. So they would have the ultimate, that won't work for us, or if this is the best we can do type of thing. Nobody will be happy about it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm
You're
glad
quite
to hear
welcome.
that it would be a group of
Yes, ma'am.
sort of stakeholders from different groups.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much.
I had a couple questions. So is this an all-inclusive list on this that the SPNO levy pays for, or are there items that are not listed that would be?
This is the huge high-level overview of what the levy funds.
Okay, but it would be a disproportional impact to different items that are on here.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
I mean, I guess that's the piece that I'm missing, because if it didn't pass, obviously you have to, as you stated, the special education programs would have to be funded. That's required by law. So it would probably impact something else. So that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
It's probably not all inclusive what we're showing here.
Right. Right now, this list, like I said, this list is what the levy has historically funded. However, because of legal requirements, it does not mean that if the levy passes, for example, special education,
Correct.
it may be reduced a little if there's something in there that we can reduce. But because of federal mandates and the needs of our students, special education would probably displace something else that may not be on this list.
Yeah, I look at this and I instantly start questioning, okay, so what % of the student transportation budget is coming from the 14% of the SPNO levy?
Pretty close to a third.
A third? Okay.
Yes,
And
pretty
then
close.
athletics and extracurricular activities, is that 100%?
100%.
Okay. Additional teachers, that's probably, is that 100%?
Additional teachers, the way that the salaries are funded is that this funding from the state comes to us based on a statewide average plus regionalization. And even with that, we do not receive enough funding for a single teacher. So technically, the levy funds a portion of every single one of our teachers.
Okay. These are the, I like knowing that information so
Yes,
that we
sir.
can speak to it, you know, when we're in the community, so that you have an understanding, because a lot of times you put stuff up and people immediately obviously go to, well, we're not going to not have student transportation. We're not going to not have, so they think it's a scare tactic. So it's really good to have, what is the heart, what's just the data has no feelings. What is truly in the budget that is coming that would be impacted. So appreciate
You're
appreciate
quite
the
welcome.
answers.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions?
Next slide, please. So the SPNO levy, the dollar amounts that we're asking for in the November 8th election, we approach this not based on how much we could get legally from our community, because the state assesses our levy cap, meaning the most that we can get, collect. And what our mindset when we put together our proposal for the election, the proposition on the ballot, was to, one, keep our rates consistent with what we have historically collected, and to, if we're off, that it would go down instead of, the rate would go down instead of up. And so when we did this, we used very conservative rates. Because Monroe School District's enrollment has dropped over the last few years, our levy is based on a per pupil funding rather than a assessed value. And so we have two components of our calculation, and that is what our projected enrollment is going to be and what our assessed value increase or decrease is. And so when we put together this model, we assume that our student enrollment would grow by 200 students a year. And we assume that our assessed value will only grow by 5% a year. And as you know, over the past half a dozen years, we've been averaging between 9 and 12% assessed value growth for Monroe. And so we were very conservative. So if assessed values are greater than what we used in our projection, then these rates will, for the average homeowner, be lower. And so again, we wanted to ensure that it was truly a renewal levy and that there were no hidden cost increases for our homeowners. And so our proposal is for the $1.71 for the first year per thousand, $1.72 for the second, $1.73 for the third and the fourth. Currently, in calendar year 2022, our taxpayers are paying $1.78 per thousand for this levy that we're in the final year of. And so it's close to what we're paying, and we're not expecting it to be increased because our projections were too low. The first year is just a little over 100,000 more than what we're collecting in calendar year 22. And again, it is to truly make it a renewal levy and to be very open, honest, and transparent for our community. Any questions on this page?
Councilmember Scarborough.
All right, you jogged my question on attendance. You said 5,300. Hasn't it been more than that in the past, like up over 6,000?
It was way back when we had WAVA. You remember WAVA? It was significantly higher. For the past several years, we've had both Shoreline Community College and Everett Community College youth re-engagement programs. And because of new regulations and rules, the board voted to discontinue those two programs. So the decline in enrollment is because we don't have those two programs.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. And then the final slide is how our tax rate compares to our closest neighbors. And this is not just the levy. This includes bonds that districts may have and capital levies and tech levies that districts may have. Currently, Monroe School District has our expiring M&O levy and the bond that the voters approved in 2015. So currently our tax rates are at 261 in calendar year 22 per thousand, 261 per thousand. And the rest of the rates are also for our neighbors for calendar year 22 as well. So we are still rather low compared to our neighbors.
All right.
So voting details is that the ballots will drop at the end of October. And the ballots will be due on November 8th to be postmarked by November 8th. And we hope that everyone goes out and votes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Oh, Councilmember Hanford.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a question for clarification. Is this levy to replace the one that failed last year? Or is that a completely separate one and now this is not related at all?
It is essentially in February, it was our first attempt.
Okay,
Every calendar year that school districts are allowed to make 2 attempts to pass a levy for the next calendar year.
Okay.
So in February, it was the same levy that we're having our second attempt in November. And this will be our second and final attempt for tax collection in calendar year 23.
thank you for the clarification.
You're quite welcome.
That was last year. Thank you.
All right. We good? Thank you so much for coming tonight. We've got the information and the presentation, and for our next item of business, we're going to be going into an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1) subsection little I for 7 minutes. But thank you for all of you for coming out, and I'm sure we'll be bringing something back soon to discuss how we can support. So, thank you. So with that, we've got, we do have a need for an executive session, as already stated on the record. We are going to here. Are we doing it here? Okay. So we will do it here, and we will be back in session or extensions, announce extensions by, what the heck time is it? 7:58.
For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended 5 minutes.
All right, we are back in session. First item up is item number 8 is the consent agenda. Councilmember Hanford.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hanford and second by Councilmember Davis to approve the consent agenda in its totality. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Number 9, new business. 9.1, distributors, Washington settlement. That is going to be Mr. Huebner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, sir. Good evening, council. Council, before you this evening are 2 documents that have been reviewed by the city attorney and submitted to council for consideration. These are related to the opioid case that has been litigated by the state attorney general's office. On April 26th at your business meeting, council approved the city's execution of the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding, which established an allocation structure for distributing future settlement funds between Washington cities in the event of a judgment or settlement in that ongoing opioid litigation. Since then, the state attorney general's office has settled its case against 3 of the opioid distributors, Amerisource, Bergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. They are now asking Washington cities to join the settlement. The terms of the settlement include up to $518 million payable over 17 years, of which $430 million would be spent on combating the opioid epidemic. From that $430 million, it would be split evenly between the state and the cities. So the cities that participate in the settlement have access to a pool of funds of up to $215 million. The allocation of those funds you already approved at that April 26th action. So the requested action to you this evening is to authorize the mayor to sign the participation form and the allocation agreement that would entitle Monroe to those funds as described in accordance with the allocation structure previously approved by you all. The one caveat here is for this settlement to be effective, 90% of the local governments in Washington state with a population of over 10,000, such as Monroe, need to join the settlement by September 23rd. So action is requested this evening. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my report. Myself and Mr. Lell are available for questions.
All right, Councilmember Davis.
I have no question, but I'll move to authorize the mayor to sign the participation form and allocation agreement for the distributors Washington settlement.
Second, Fulcher. I got a motion from Councilmember Davis and a second from Councilmember Fulcher to approve the motion as stated. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next item is 9.2 recruitment policy. Mr. Worthen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Tonight, we're here to talk about a labor shortage that's been addressed. You know, it's currently happening in a number of areas. We've actually talked about this a handful of times in the Finance and HR Committee. And what we have tonight is basically in order to stay competitive, is the policy in front of you is authorizes the mayor to offer incentives for individuals that would want to come and work here with a significant payback agreement if they should leave early. Can you hit the next slide? Currently, we have 4 open police officer positions, and we have actually 2 senior engineer positions. Those positions have been open since August 11th. Our police officer positions have been open for much longer. Next, you'll see the other cities that are close to us in proximity that are offering other incentives. Arlington, Everett, Lake Stevens, Linwood, Marysville, Mill Creek. And kind of one of the things that council member at the time, Gamble, tonight Mayor Pro Tem Gamble, wanted to know was, where's our data, him and data? I'm glad I pulled this up because I didn't realize I'd be sitting so close to you tonight. So this was, but timely. But so here we have, this is police officer positions only. So this is the mid-step of each one, their annual, and then the hiring bonus as it compares to the city of Monroe. That what you can't see on there is where the city of Monroe is.
That'd be nice.
And it must not have made it through, but I will tell you that the average of all of these mid-step is $7,317, and the average for Monroe is $7,461. But what you'll see is all these other agencies are offering 15,000 or more, you know, as an incentive to sign on. So what we're trying to do is incentivize people to come work here. Other agencies, Lake Stevens and Everett, offer moving expenses as well.
What's our annual? You were talking about
Yes.
the mid-step. What's our annual?
89,532.
So we're higher.
Yeah.
We're
On the
higher.
annual average, we're a couple
Okay.
$1,000s higher. But when you factor in those hiring incentives, yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
What's the success on the hiring bonuses for these other cities? Do they have positions that are sitting open as well?
I was on a call maybe a month ago, Tyler, when we, with several other HR individuals, and I know that Arlington's had theirs out for a while, and they at that time were targeting being fully staffed very soon. And I believe it's working for agencies like Marysville. I'd look to the chief in the back for head nod. That's the best we're gonna get. That it is working in other areas.
Okay. Councilmember Scarborough.
I heard you ask something. I'm not sure I got that. This bonus is a one-time bonus or every year?
It's a great question. I appreciate that. It's one time, but paid over 3 different times. It's paid in one at time of hire, one at 6 months, and one at 12 months for the total.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So, and here's how we figure out how much money each individual is going to get. 0 to 2 years, 1 month, 3 to 5, 2 months, 6+ 3 months. And we'd also like in this policy, the ability to front load sick leave and to hire individuals at a higher accrual based on their years of experience for vacation. They must stay with the city for 36 months after the incentive is paid, or they'd be responsible for, depending on when they left, either the total amount or prorated share. And there's a repayment plan right there. And there's your equal distributions of determined monetary incentive down at the bottom, Councilmember Scarborough. So if we paid them this, they would get them in those 3 installments.
Okay.
And then finally, the last part of this process is, you know, sometimes we need help. We can't do it all on our own. So if an individual recruits somebody, says, hey, you should come work for our, city, then we'd like to give that employee and an incentive for that work. Department heads, HR folks, that sort of would not be allowed. Anyone that has basically undue, pressure in the process would not be allowed for that $500.
Is that after the 6 month?
It is,
They stay on
correct.
for
Yeah.
6 months?
Yes.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Oh, there we go. Councilmember, you know what? Flip a coin. Who wants to go first? You did it at the same time. Councilmember Hanford, look at that.
Sure. No, I appreciate the presentation and I appreciate the thought of and planning that's gone into this. And I think it's very well timed. We need to fill those spots. So I move to adopt the recruiting policy with such manner revisions as deemed necessary.
Got a motion by Councilmember Hanford and a second by Councilmember Kinney. Yeah, I would just like to add, I really do appreciate having the data. It makes it, when we when we're talking about the why we're doing it and being able to see how everybody around us and what we're up against from a competition perspective gives all of us talking points on the why. And it's been, my personal opinion, it's done fiscally responsibly, how you've got it laid out there. So appreciate it. So any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Worried about nothing, Ben. All right. Next up, we have council member reports. We're just going to go down the dais. Council member Scarborough.
I've had some inquiries that there is a thought process of a methamphetamine counseling or rehab center in the top of the Doloff Key building. I can't seem to find any answers to that. If somewhere along the line we could get an answer to that, because I'm getting those inquiries from citizens.
Yeah, I'm unaware. Is anybody?
Okay.
Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, we have gotten an application for it's classified as an inpatient medical office, and they do drug treatment. It's not methadone, and I wish that I could remember the name of it, but it's something similar to that. They actually had a facility here, a few years ago. I'm not sure when they closed it down out in the Frylands, and they're looking to reopen that. And for anybody that's looking for information on that, we do have a link to the project page. It's on the community development page of the website. And there was, and I believe linked on there, there was an article in the Tribune maybe a month ago that I think did a really good job of describing what the facility is. And they did an interview with the group Ideal Option that's looking to open it up. From a process standpoint, that use is it requires a conditional use permit from the city, and they have applied. We've gone through the initial comment period. We will be setting a date for a hearing with the hearing examiner. So there will be another opportunity for people to comment. We did get 2 comments already in the open comment period. Both comments were expressing concern and asking some questions about the facility, and we've passed those along to the applicant for their response. So we have not set a date yet for the public hearing, but when we do, we'll be sending out public notice for that, and we'll be providing information on the community development page on the website.
All right. You good?
You turn it back on, yeah. So what I understand is there's an application being looked at. There will be a public hearing set, and a date will be promulgated, and people can comment then. You currently have several comments that you forwarded to the people asking to do it. My question might be, they had an office in the Frylands, why do they want to move it downtown?
I think that the information that they provided in the application was they were looking for more of a central location. And I don't quote me on this, but I believe that they had some leasing issues at the other location. I can't speak to the details on that, but they were looking for a location centrally located that also had good access to public transit.
Okay, appreciate getting that information when it comes out.
All right. Anything else? All right, Councilmember Fisher.
Hey, so much to talk about. I think it's Suboxone that is, instead of methadone, it's Suboxone or Suboxone. But yeah, so many things. So a few of us had the privilege to going to Washington, D.C. and having a voice for our city and our county as far as infrastructure things go. I'm not going to steal the whole show. I'm going to leave you guys a bunch of stuff to fill in and talk about, by the way. Incredible experience, actually being able to sit down with our elected officials and talk about our concerns and how the Snohomish County Alliance, the group of us that was together down there, how many things are actually connected. So whether we're talking about the Port of Everett or community transit or Boeing or Lake Stevens or the city of Everett, we're all very connected. And it was kind of fun towards the end. We would have somebody else speaking on some of the issues that we had, and we would be speaking on some of the issues they had and how intertwined they actually became. Great group of people. They were all, we had PSE, who else? There was a lot of them, but I will leave the rest of the Washington DC update to my other two colleagues. All right. Councilmember Hanford.
Sure. Yes, it was an amazing time. I actually wrote down the ones because I wanted to highlight. The county exec Summers was supposed to attend, but because of the fires, he backed out and had his operations officer, who was going to go on the trip anyway, go. The mayor of Everett and Lake Stevens, the CEO of the Port of Everett, the government affairs reps for PSC and Republic Services, the CEO of Community Transit, and the CEO of Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. So it was great that there were three of us there. Our city was well represented. There's some weight when you go around a room and there's 10, 12 people and a fourth of them are from one place. It's like, oh yeah, you guys are serious. And it was also great because meetings kept getting switched and scheduled at different times. And the last day we had to split up because there were meetings happening at the same spot. And so I'm dying to hear about your meeting because I went to the DOT meeting and I can tell you that we had a great meeting with the DOT and the mayor of, well, first of all, the DOT representative didn't know that Highway 2 went all the way to New York. He was shocked. Neither did the mayor of Everett or the Snohomish County exec representative. So they were like, wow, this is like a big deal. And so we came out of there. I felt really good. He was impressed that county people and city people were, working together. And so it was really productive meeting. So definitely some ideas came out of that. That's what I wanted to bring up about DC. Excellent trip. Another thing, I got an email from the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County, I'm assuming you guys did too, but there's a public officials reception October 6th from 9 a.m. to noon in Everett. I'm not able to attend, otherwise I'd be there, but be great to follow up, especially after having gone on this trip and really the collaboration that took place. For those that can make it, it would be great if we could have some representation from the city. I already told Jeffrey and Deborah that I'm out of town, so I won't be able to make that, but just throwing that out there for anybody that can. And then I did want to say too, hats off to Ms. Hassard and the team for helping us to receive such a glowing audit report. So that was it.
All right. Councilmember Kinney.
All right. Ms. Hassert and I attended the SLU Flood Control District Advisory Board meeting on the 8th of September and drove to Mitchell, the Mitchell Estate in Snohomish and met there with the group. And that was a great meeting. I also attended the Multicultural Fair. I think that was last Saturday at Sky River Park, and that was really great. And they had some beautiful horses there and a lot of dancing and singing, and Police Chief Jolly was there. I know the mayor and Councilmember Fulcher were there, and it was really a good time. And cross country has started, so I'm a happy person these days. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Fulcher.
First thing is, yes, on the 10th, before we left for DC, the VFW pancake breakfast, that was a lot of fun, pretty well attended, I thought. And then following that, we went over to the multicultural affair, easy for me to say, and both Mayor Thomas and I spoke at the opening. So that was very nice, my first experience over there. DC, it was amazing. It was my first time on the East Coast. I, unlike most people, did not do that 8th grade trip everyone talks about. So I had no idea what I was doing there until I got there. It was just amazing. Amazing group of people that we were with. And I felt like we got we were very intentionally listened to. I was surprised by both Representative Larson and Senator Cantwell. I was very impressed by them. They were very informed about our area and the problems, and I did not feel the brush off. And I cannot remember which meeting we went to while you were at the USDOT, but I think it was Representative Strickland's office. Is that right? Oh, you didn't get to go to Cantwell? Oh, well, that was awesome. I'm sorry you missed that, because that was like almost 2 hours of it was nearly 2 hours. Yeah, it was, honestly, it was a little hard to stay awake because I had a little less sleep the night before because someone had to do line bikes until 1 a.m. But, but it was very productive. Thank you for letting us go. And I want to say that Monroe was not only well represented, we were also the best dressed. Those guys really clean up well. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Councilmember Davis.
Nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
All right, great. Let's see, what do I have to report? Well, you said, was it cross country's back, Councilmember King? What you say? Football's back.
Yes.
Our Bearcats are 3-0 and ranked number 9 in the state or 12, something like that, for 3A schools. Anyway, they're back in town on Friday. So up at the high school, which, by the way, is for those that are interested, and we just heard about the levy tonight. It's a great opportunity if you want to support, to go and wave signs which I know we've all done because we've all run for office. So that is a great opportunity there. Also, just wanted to throw, I know we've got, is it Song River that does we've got a couple auctions that have come home. Yes. Oh, you're going? I can't, because I think it's during the football game. Isn't it Friday? Yeah. But the Public School Foundation is moving theirs back. So the Public School Foundation auction will be in person this year, and it will be in Monroe, and it'll be at Song River. So it'll be good. So excited to see that type of stuff coming back into the fray and raising funds in person, which will be fantastic. So all good stuff. All right. Next item on the agenda, there's a couple departmental reports. If you guys are okay, they're in the packet. If we're good, you guys can reach out with questions. Are we all good there? All right. We're going to move on to Mayor Administrative Reports. I think we're just going to go over the extended agenda, correct? Mr. Worthen.
Mr. Rich.
Oh, Mr. Hubner, my apologies.
No problem, sir. Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll take a look at the extended agenda very quickly. Your meeting next week, September 27th, there will be a P3 meeting at 6 p.m. 3 items currently scheduled. Mr. Roberts will bring forward for discussion the transportation and utility comprehensive plan updates, as well as the capital facilities plan public input progress update. And Mr. Bailey will have the multifamily tax exemption regulations. Going into the business meeting at 7 p.m. Under the consent agenda, you'll have the standard AP and ACH, as well as meeting minutes. Ms. Hassert will have a resolution for an update to the procurement policy. Chief Jolly will have an interlocal agreement for Washington traffic safety. And Mr. Roberts will have a deed of trust securing a Department of Commerce grant for the Boys and Girls Club. Under new business, Mr. Roberts will have an ordinance for first reading related to motorized scooters. And Ms. Wyckoff will have a park board appointment. Department reports, finance, human resources, IT, community development, and police. And we are anticipating an executive session for pricing of property. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm open for any questions related to the 27th.
I do not think I'll be able to attend on the 27th, so if we could let that reflect. I have a business trip that's just been scheduled. I'll be out of town. I don't even think I'll be able to join virtually, so I apologize, but cannot be helped. Anybody else? Questions on extended agenda?
We do have one more slide, if you don't mind, sir.
Okay, yep.
Thank you very much. So just looking the following week to October 4th, there's a Public Safety Committee meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. Several items on the agenda that evening. Chief Jolly will have an SUAS update, review year-to-date police department statistics, body-worn cameras update, crime victim advocacy review, and police facility needs. And Judge Ness will be presenting a municipal court quarterly update. At your 7 p.m. Study session meeting, there will be a presentation from the Sky Valley Food Bank. We are tentatively planning for a recognition of board, commission, and committee members. Chief Jolly will have a K-9 retirement ceremony and a sergeant promotion ceremony. And for discussion, a few items I will be presenting for your review, and a potential process to allow for ARP recipients to request a change of scope in their projects. Ms. Knight will be leading a discussion related to the CHSAB membership count. That's our Community Human Services Advisory Board. And Ms. Hassert will be presenting the council with estimates of revenues and the preliminary budget.
All right. Anything, council member, who is it down there? Kenny or Hanford? Council member Hanford.
Thank you. Yeah, I will most likely not be at that meeting because I'm leaving town, and then I will not be at the following meeting, will be the 11th.
Yes.
Just
Okay.
for the record, Ms. Wyckoff.
Awesome. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Next one's me as well.
We're actually going to do this one? Oh, no, just kidding.
Yeah, oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Mr. Huebner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Quick update from the City Administrator Executive Department. Representative Steele and Gaynor, our new state representatives beginning in January from the 12th District, will be visiting with you on, we'll be visiting the community on October 28th and attending the council meeting that evening. There is also a ribbon cutting that afternoon for the Chain Lake Road Shared Path Project at 4:30 p.m. We have invited the state representatives if they're able to be here that early in the afternoon. I believe Ms. Wyckoff would appreciate if you all plan to attend the ribbon cutting, if you would let her know so we can do a notice of quorum if needed. There will be a request at a future meeting on October 28th that we change the November 1st study session to a business meeting. This would be allowed to accommodate canceled meetings. There would be a motion, as I mentioned, at October 28th. Council has already amended the calendar that was passed 25th. Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Thank you very much. October 25th. Council already amended the calendar to designate November 15th and December 5th study sessions as business meetings. So we only need you to take action on the one. And then finally, Ms. Hassert asked me to let you know that the mayor's recommended budget will be distributed on October 3rd. Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my report.
All right. Any questions? Okay. Next up is the mayor's report. We do have Monroe. There's 4 editions of Monroe this week that is in there, but then we also have 2 proclamations that I am going to read into the record. The first one up would be recognizing September 15th through October 15th, 2022 as Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas in 1988, the United States Congress adopted a resolution designating September 15th, October 15th of each year as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And during National Hispanic Heritage Month, the United States celebrates the culture and tradition of Spanish-speaking residents who trace their roots to Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And whereas residents of Monroe who identify as Hispanic or Latino represent 19% of Monroe's residents, and people who identify as Hispanic or Latino are people whose ancestors have lived in the Americas, including lands within today's United States, for over 500 years. And whereas Hispanic people continue to be integral to the prosperity of the United States, and Monroe's Hispanic community has had and continues to have a profound influence on our city and country by enhancing and shaping our national heritage with centuries-old traditions that reflect multi-ethnic and multicultural customs. And whereas Imagine Monroe aspires that Monroe is a safe place for everyone, where everyone feels at home and everyone feels they belong. And as a part of realizing Imagine Monroe, the city of Monroe recognizes and honors the diverse backgrounds and lived experiences of all residents of our community. And whereas the National Council of Hispanic Employment Program Managers theme for 2022 Hispanic Heritage Month observance is Unidos, inclusivity for a stronger nation, and the theme encourages us to ensure that all voices are represented and welcomed to help build stronger communities and a stronger nation. Now, therefore, I, Jeffrey Thomas, Mayor of the City of Monroe, Washington, do hereby recognize September 15th to October 15th, 2022 as Hispanic Heritage Month, and call upon all residents in our community to learn more about the rich Hispanic culture, traditions, and history, and celebrate the contributions that have been made to our country and our community by people of Hispanic heritage. Thank you. The next proclamation is in recognizing the month of September 2022 is Hydrocephalus Awareness Month. I actually just participated in the local chapter's walk, the Hydro Walk that is held in Magnuson Park every year. It was held on Saturday. It is the highest grossing donated hydrocephalus walk in the United States. So they raise over, north of $150,000 or something like that for hydrocephalus awareness. So whereas hydrocephalus affects approximately 1 million Americans in every stage of life, from infants to the elderly, and whereas 1 out of every 1,000 babies are born with hydrocephalus, making it as common as Down syndrome and more common than spina bifida or brain tumors, and is the most common reason for brain surgery in children. And whereas hydrocephalus is a condition with no cure, is primarily characterized by excessive cerebral spinal fluid on the brain that results in abnormal widening of the spaces in the ventricles, which creates harmful pressure and can be fatal if left untreated. And whereas the only treatment for hydrocephalus requires brain surgery, and many individuals require more than one surgery to remain well. And whereas representatives from the National, Regional, and State Hydrocephalus Association, in conjunction with leaders from professional community and medical-based organizations and associations, are dedicated to increasing public awareness of hydrocephalus and the needs of families parenting children and adults diagnosed with hydrocephalus. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jeffrey Thomas, and the City Council of the City of Monroe, Washington, do hereby recognize the month of September 22 as Hydrocephalus Awareness Month, and encourage the community to join us in this worthy observance. And I would just add that obviously this is especially special for me, for my niece. And I don't think that there's 2 days that are her Super Bowl. It's the Hydro Walk that she just participated in the month of September. She's been here before council before to receive this. And it just means a ton to my family and to her. And then the second biggest day is the parade, because she thinks it's for her, because she rides in the car. So I don't think I'll ever be able to not run for office, to at least have the opportunity for Gracia to have her parade, because that's how she views it. So anyway, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you're not here, but thank you. All right. Next up, we have a couple discussion items. The first one up being 13.1, discussion proposed code amendments to chapter 22.12 MMC definitions. Ms. Moreno. There you are, Ms. Marrero, you are up.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. It's nice to see you in person. I'm here to lead the discussion on proposed code amendments to chapter 22.12 MMC definitions. And I'm going to give you a quick timeline on this project because it's been a couple years since we've been working on it. So back in 2017, the city began a complete rewrite of the existing development regulations and zoning code. The Unified Development Regulations, or UDR, was adopted by City Council in April of 2019. Subsequent Chapter 22.12 definitions was adopted in June 2019 due to its omission from the UDR ordinance. Because of time restraints, Chapter 22.12 was adopted with no changes and included pre-UDR definitions. The current definitions chapter contains several incomplete definitions, outdated definitions, and incorrect definitions. The interconnection between the definitions chapter and Title 22 MMC, which is the UDR, is important because it contains the city's development regulations. The UDR consolidates many land uses that were in the previous code and replaces them with broader land use designations. As a result, most of the definitions for various land uses currently in the UDR are absent, as they were under broader, more general land use designations. As a result, exists a substantial disconnect between Chapter 22.12, which has created confusion and complicates interpretation of the entire UDR. The Planning Commission began working on the proposed permanent amendments to Chapter 22.12 in 2021 and held 3 consecutive meetings in the fall of 2021. Due to the increasing number of recurring problems in that same year, the city adopted emergency interim ordinances to Chapter 22.12 in 2021. Due to unforeseen staffing issues, the work to complete the formal review and approval process was not completed prior to ordinance number 008/2021 expiring. So on May 10th, 2022, City Council adopted emergency interim ordinance number 014/2022. And what that ordinance did was just reestablish the development definitions while the Planning Commission completed its review of the formal amendments to Chapter 22.12. The emergency interim ordinances that I just recited can be categorized as new definitions, amended definitions, and deleted definitions. So all these terms that I'm referring to are in your agenda packet. They're all listed out in the separate categories. And this is kind of where I stepped in. A previous planner was working on this project from the very beginning. And so earlier this year, I took this code amendment to the Planning Commission, and which they continued working on the proposed permanent code amendments on May 23rd, 2022, with 4 subsequent meetings held. A public hearing was held at the September 12th Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission is recommending the City Council approve the draft ordinance. Some of the state mandated terms cannot be changed. So those include any SEPA terms, and then the following terms that are related to affordable housing, emergency shelter, enhanced service facility, city, family, household, low-income household, moderate income household, extremely low income household, very low income household, owner, and short-term rental. So those are all the terms that we're not able to change at this time. The final proposed changes after going back to the Planning Commission this year are also listed in the agenda bill towards the end of that section. So I did attach Chapter 22.12 to the agenda packet. And I know it's over 100 pages, so I'm sure many of you have not had a chance to go through that whole chapter. But I just want to let you know that all the changes that were made are shaded gray. And we also left the notes in there from staff on why those changes were made. So we did have an intern that helped us do that initially. And then when he left, I went ahead and made some other changes after a legal review. So the next steps and why I'm here today to ask the council is first, would you like to proceed with the current review? And then I'll plan to schedule a public hearing in October. There's the option of addressing any red flags or definitions of concern. Or there's also the choice to conduct a full review of Chapter 22.12 definitions. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Because I came into this project in the middle of it, as always, I can do some more research if you have any questions and come back at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Kinney.
I just wanted to express my appreciation to Ms. Marrero and the Planning Commission. When I first started looking through this, and I did look at it, I felt like I was at work because I'm a writer and editor by trade. And this looks like the kind of stuff I deal with every day in corporate communications. So it's a huge amount of work. I just really appreciate that someone cares enough to go through these outdated phrases. There were typos. It needed a refresh. And this represents hours and hours of tedious work. And I appreciate it so much. You're also making this language understandable for people that are going to be reading it in the future. And it just makes everything better. So just want to thank you.
Thank you.
The other lines. Councilmember Fulcher.
I did wait till the end there. I was part of the writing back in 2018 or whatsoever. So I do remember how much time we spent on this in my first days as a planning commissioner. Ms. Monroe, your question was how deep do we want to dive into that again?
Correct. Yes.
I'm kind of a land use nerd, so I want to dive deep on this, but I don't know what my colleagues would like to do. But I definitely think that I get conversations almost daily with people coming into my business asking me about my other job, which is more of your job, and I like understanding a bit more. So my vote is let's go.
Okay.
Councilmember Fisher.
So I agree with both of them. Diver deep would be great. Or a deeper dive would be great. I feel like these documents are following me because I also remember going through all of this stuff through planning commission. I have probably a little PTSD from it when I opened it up, started looking at it. But no, great work. It is very tedious and time consuming and mind numbing. And so I really, really appreciate what you're doing, and we'll just keep looking at them and just keep pushing forward. So thank you so much for doing it.
Anybody else? Councilmember Hanford.
Yeah, big thank you, and I agree with everything that was said, except I was not part of the group that did that. Thank you.
All right, I think we've got a general consensus to go deep.
Okay, so just to get some more clarification, so go through the whole chapter, not just the shaded gray terms that we revised or changed or deleted. Okay.
Do you have what you need?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
All right, great. Next up, item 13.2, discussion of allowing ADUs in the mixed use zone. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. So the reason I'm here this evening, we had just to give you a little bit of context, we have a property owner who has their business within the mixed use zone, and this is one of the mixed use zones along Main Street. And they had come to community development and were asking about the possibility of doing an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, and I'll assume that everybody knows generally what that is. I'll describe it in a little bit more detail. It's a use that's clearly not allowed in the code, and we had informed the property owner of that, and I had provided some background and some explanation for why. And and then they were asking, well, what's the process to consider possibly changing that? And I had informed them that it's a decision by city council. It requires a code amendment. In this case, it would also require a comprehensive plan amendment. So the request was that we put this on the agenda for a work session with city council, just so we can, so I can really give you a little bit of background of what this is, and to get some feedback on if council is interested in doing that. And so with that, I will really what I'd provided for you this evening was really a code analysis, to sort of walk through what the mixed use zones are, and why the ADUs are not included as a permitted use in those zones. And I think that it's very clear that the intent, the conscious intent of the way the code was written was that they weren't included. So I'll give you a little bit about that background and sort of the journey of how I've come to that conclusion. And just for everybody, it's, if an accessory dwelling unit is as the name applies, is a accessory use typically to a residential use. And that's how we define ADUs in our code. Is it clearly says that an ADU is accessory to an existing primary residential use. Back to the original question that we had gotten, what the request was to do this accessory use to a commercial use, which is clearly not allowed in the code by definition. We do allow ADUs, and we have 4 residential zones. We do allow ADUs in 3 of those zones. The one that we do not allow it is in the multifamily. And that kind of goes back, that concept is also ingrained within the intent and the code language for the mixed use zones. The mixed use zones are for retail, commercial, cultural uses, as well as multifamily, or as we actually don't define that term in our code. I use it a lot. What we call it attached dwellings, and attached dwellings are anything from a triplex and above. And so I should have asked there, I did include a zoning map in the packet, and hopefully that came out in a form that you can see and understand, just so that we know generally what we're talking about in terms of the mixed use zones. And so if you're looking at the zoning map, they're all shades of purple, which helps as long as you're not colorblind. And it typically runs from the edge of downtown out to the end of Main Street. And there's two different mixed use zones. There's one we call the mixed use neighborhood, which is the lighter purple that's closer to downtown, and then the sort of darker purple as you go further west out Main Street. There's also mixed use zones that run along the north of 179th up toward the hospital. And the hospital itself is in a mixed use zone, which is specifically called mixed use medical, which we do not allow residential in. So we're really talking about the 2 mixed use zones, the mixed use neighborhood and the mixed use general. So that gives you an idea of where those are located. One of the things that I wanted to point out we have purpose statements that precede the real sort of dimensional and use tables in the development code. And those purpose statements are intended to provide an overall view and concept of what the intent of the zone is for. And when you look at the language for the mixed use zones, it says that the purpose is to integrate a mix of office, retail, entertainment, and cultural uses. And then here was the phrase, and attached residential units throughout the district. And so that's where we get the language that the intention is not to allow single family residential units in the mixed use zone. We have some that exist, but they're pre-existing prior to the adoption of the code. And so therefore, since an ADU is required to be accessory to a single family, to an existing residential zone, but not multifamily. That's sort of how that ties into the mixed use zone. And I've included in the staff report that just to highlight that language. Then a couple of conclusions to come to from that analysis is that it's clear that an ADU is required to be an accessory to an existing primary dwelling unit. And that's the exact language in the code. It's not accessory to commercial or retail uses. And the code, and as I said, the code doesn't allow accessory to the non-residential uses. In looking at researching other codes, because a lot of cities are revamping and adopting ADU codes for the first time. And so I had reached out to a number of different planners and done a lot of research. And I was only able to find one city that actually allowed an ADU to be accessory to a non-residential use. And it was a small town in Oregon who has never done one, but their code doesn't have this requirement that it be accessory to, that it has to be accessory to residential. So I think that, it's clear that the intent in our code is to limit the accessory dwelling units to existing residential uses. And how that ties into some of the larger planning pieces that we do. I mean, you've probably heard us refer to the buildable lands report that the county adopts and includes residential targets for all the cities within the county. And that takes into account our existing zoning, the locations and the amount and the type of residential that's allowed in those zoning. So for example, when we look at the mixed use zone, we come up with an estimate of how many residential units you may see in that zone. I mean, it's not based on allowing single family residences, which is essentially what an ADU would be if it were accessory to a non-residential use, if that makes any sense. So the intent of that zone fits into those larger planning processes that we've gone through, setting our residential targets and by extension, the housing targets that we have as well. And those are things that we'll also be looking to update as we go through our comprehensive plan update, which we've already started on. So given that from the staff's perspective, it would be my recommendation that we not pursue a change that would allow this, but I wanted to bring it to council for your, just to give you the educational piece of why we require this and to get some input and questions if this is something that you would be interested in pursuing.
Councilmember, who's first? Councilmember Scarborough.
Can you point on this map where this question is?
The purple.
If you look at the areas along Main Street that are in the light purple, and then you continue west along Main Street, there's sort of a darker purple zoning district. That's the lighter purple is the mixed use neighborhood, and the darker purple is the mixed use general. And then on the north end of 179th, as you go toward the hospital, there's another section of mixed use general in that area.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It tells me where it is. I'm trying to see in my head who wants what, where in there when I look at the neighborhood. So I'll have to make a drive around to see what you're talking about.
Good. All right. Councilmember Fulcher.
All right, so the mixed use neighborhood, as you have said, there are single family residents there. Are those people currently allowed to add an ADU?
My interpretation is that they would. The interesting thing is those existing residential uses fall within a non-conforming category. And I would have to pursue that a little in more detail with our city attorney to get an answer on that. And just to also point out, there are a lot of businesses in that area that are located in structures that were initially built to be residences. And they've transitioned over time to be commercial.
Let's just say I know a lot of the neighborhood there. And
I thought you might.
yeah. And I'm just thinking that there are some neighbors there who, yes, are surrounded by businesses, but we are talking about a time where housing is no longer single-family residence centered. And we all know that. It just seems like we would be shooting ourselves in the foot to not allow more ADUs where they can be nicely put in. So are you recommending that we say no to ADUs in the all mixed use, or just the mixed use general, mixed use neighborhood? Are we talking about all mixed use areas, or just
It
buildings that are just a building, just a business right now?
It would be all mixed use zones. Essentially, it would keep the code and the requirements in there as they currently stand. And one thing that I've failed to mention is the transition and recent development that we've seen. We've seen a fair amount of townhouses, apartments, and multifamily particularly in the mixed use general zone with some of the developments that are out along Main Street and have been approached about some others that may potentially occur. So the intent, I guess my point being, the intent of providing that attached housing at that higher density, which is embedded in the code, we're actually seeing that come to fruition. So I think that intent is actually working on the ground.
I'm still thinking that if someone owns their building and they have a basement that could be converted into a additional living space for a separate family, I'm still a big fan of liberty. So I like the idea of ADUs. I realize that, we would have to change our plans and whatnot, but I am always going to be in favor of people doing what they want with their property within reason. So there you go.
Okay. Councilmember Hanford.
Thank you. Well said. I like that. So in looking at your map, can you just verify with us by the colors? Because my understanding is that we're an ADU friendly city. So is there any color on here besides the lilac that we're not allowed to do ADUs? Or is it just the lilac and everywhere else can do ADUs?
Currently in the downtown commercial, which is the red, and any of the institutional or park zones, which I think that's sort of practical, and the commercial zones that are up along Highway 2 and the North Kelsey area.
So all those are not allowed.
Correct.
So the general, commercial, all that. So then the only areas where let's flip it the other way then. What colors can we do ADUs legally? Just the white, yellow, orange, brown?
Correct. In which are essentially the residential zones in the city, the strict residential zones.
Point of clarification, though, if I heard when you answered previously, if there is an existing residential structure within one of those mixed areas, based off your interpretation now, which I get you would check with the city attorney, they would still fall under the ability to go through the ADU process because they have a primary dwelling unit.
There's a primary residential use established on there. I think that where the prohibition, if you will, comes is when it's a non-residential use. So a residential use being accessory to, say, a retail or a commercial use, I think is really the sort of the heart of the issue that we're talking about. I know it's a little nuanced.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fulcher?
Yeah, me again. So I'm thinking of across the street from me, there are some old houses that have been turned into businesses now. And plenty of access in the alley and room that you could do an ADU without messing with the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I have my problem. Because if the previous owner did use it for a business, but it was a house and it is in a neighborhood that is design standards, looks like the house, you know, talks like a house, quacks like a house, whatever, but there's a business in there, I don't see a problem with having an ADU in the back. So you're still going to get an argument from me on this just because I know it's mixed use neighborhood. It's in the title, neighborhood. So think about that, please.
Councilmember Kinney?
I'm just curious, Lance, what your concern is. Could you share with us what your issues are with not allowing this?
Well, it's as I mentioned, when we look at the housing targets, the buildable lands reports, when we look at what the build out, and we certainly have a need for residential units. I mean, we have a deficit, and we don't have a lot of land available. And in order to meet those targets, we're going to need to have areas that are not just single family residences. And so that was part of the goal in allowing that type of residential in that mixed use zone to be something other than single family residence. And we've seen that happening. And so, yeah, it's certainly a transition zone. It's not uncommon to see areas that were originally residential, not just in Monroe, but in other communities where they transitioned from residential to commercial, and then potentially the continuing transition into other types of residential uses that are at a density other than what was the original single family density that they were built at. So that would be my concern. If we were to see those areas be developed, or honestly to continue for the long term as single family residences, then it would create a situation where we would need to apply that density in other parts in the community. And we have the mixed use neighborhood is intended to be close to commercial, close to the downtown. You know, the idea being that you're providing some density to do some other long-term objectives like downtown revitalization and some of the other things that we've talked about as well.
Okay, before we go back to Councilmember Hanford, so I do have quite a bit of experience in our ADU code. I actually agree with you, Mr. Bailey, and you may find that surprising. But I guess I just go back to what the definition is. It's an accessory dwelling. So there are quite a few, because we want to incent this, we've talked about it. So when you talk about capital impact fees, the sewer fees, all that type of stuff, it's a one based off of the primary. We actually redid that code, together when we went through that process. So, so if I own one of the businesses in the Fryland or in the industrial park or at, I'm forgetting it, north side of Highway 2, Kelsey area, should we allow a ADU to go there? I mean, that's where it's like to me, I lose it with just the definition. It's an accessory dwelling unit meant to be for someone that's a homeowner or to hey, you're gonna take care of, and there's very specific in there, like you can't move off the property. This would be in violation of that. You'd have to rewrite the code because you wouldn't have a primary person living there. The only way that on the ADU, you have to live there, was it 80% of the time? That I am forgetting, but you have to have in one of the either the ADU or the primary residence, you know, has to be the homeowner of the property living there. So there's a lot of code that's specific to the ADU. I mean, from my perspective, it would be more if, hey, if you want to put an apartment in, or could they do that?
Mhm.
Put an apartment in. We'd love to have the, you know, the additional, you know, whatever. And then we're also protected from the standpoint for those that are grandfathered in. I would like to see more information on that just to make sure. If you're a resident that's in one of those mixed areas, then absolutely you should be able to have it because that's what it was intended for. You're a primary, you know, dwelling unit, and you should be able in a residential, when you bought it, you should be able to put an ADU in. That's my personal opinion. But I personally agree with Mr. Bailey on this one. I think the way that it is written currently, it gives us that flexibility, but I don't agree if you own a business or you own a building, you say, hey, I just want to put a dwelling unit there, but I don't want to go through the process of what actually should be to get a dwelling unit there. I want to get all of the benefits of an ADU when I actually don't have a primary dwelling unit there. My 2 cents. Councilmember Hanford, you want to go again?
No, it's actually.
Oh, you good?
Well, so then, yeah, let's go again.
Okay, Councilmember Hanford.
So then what you're saying is the people in that lilac colored area could put a apartment in the backyard and not call it an accessory dwelling unit,
Correct.
and it's just called an apartment.
Mhm. And it could be anything from a triplex and above.
Okay.
Or
Triplex, so it has to have.
It would have to be 3 or more, or they could or you could convert an existing residence in that zone to a triplex or something that even had more units than that, if they could fit in there.
So could so say the business is in front, could they put in an apartment with 2 units and the business in front counts as the third, so it's a triplex? Or does it all have to be joined?
The business would be the commercial use but there would have to be at least 3 units of residential, so it would have to be a triplex. So that would have to be a separate piece from the commercial use.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. I see both sides. I totally see both sides. I would be interested to hear what other council members think, but at this point, I am supportive of Councilmember Fulcher as far as I think it'd be worth us taking a look at.
Council, oh, that's right. I'm running this. Are you done?
Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Fisher.
All right, well, since you want more input,
Yeah.
I also see both sides of this, the exception of the businesses that look like houses across the street from another business on Main Street. Frequenting that area a lot, I don't see a problem with having an ADU in the back. But realizing all of the work that has to be done to rewrite that code and then put something in there like, well, you have to work at least, the business has to be occupied 5 days a week from 8 to 5. Like, how do we regulate that? I do agree that more ADUs in that downtown area would be nice. But putting an ADU, understanding that putting an ADU attached to a business could be extremely challenging. So I basically gave you no answers. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Like, I'll have to like sift through a lot of this stuff and figure out where I land, but I absolutely see both sides. So there you have it. A whole lot of nothing.
If I might, I could maybe give you another option, which wouldn't necessarily have a predetermined answer to, but just taking into consideration that we're embarking on the comp plan update. And this would require a comprehensive plan amendment because that language about attached residential that's contained in the purpose statement for the mixed use zone, that same language is in the comp plan describing those mixed use zones. So it would be more than just doing a code amendment. We would have to do a comprehensive plan amendment, which we will be doing as a part of the comp plan update. We could include this as an item to take into consideration as we look at our land use modeling and our build out scenarios and take that into consideration as we go through that process. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee that at the end of that's something that would be included in those changes, but we can certainly put it on the list. And I think from a timing standpoint, because we did bring to council the planning commission's work program. This was not included on it. It's not to say that it couldn't be, but just for efficiency and to try to fit it into the work that we're already embarking on, that might be the best. That if we wanted to look at it, that I would recommend that strategy. If council is supportive of that.
Right. Councilmember Kinney.
I also feel conflicted. I see both sides of it. So I think that your suggestion, Mr. Bailey, is a good one and it makes sense with the timing. So I support that. Thank you.
Councilmember Scarborough.
I agree with looking at it further. I agree with Councilman Fisher. I'm on the fence too. I'd like to talk to Council Member Fulcher more about her side and Council Member Gamble about his side. Try to understand the situation before I made any kind of decision on it.
Okay. So I'm hearing a consensus that we would, because basically action is just, should we consider ADUs in the mixed use zone? And I'm hearing there is a prevailing, yeah, we need to talk about it and look into it. So,
Okay.
got what you need?
Yes, I did. Thank
All
you.
right, great. Awesome. So I think that's it for the main meeting here. So we're towards adjournment unless we've got anything else. And then we'll be, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Hanford, what do you got?
Just, I had my light on earlier, but we were rolling, so I didn't want to interrupt. Going back to the extended agenda, the November 1st meeting,
Oh, yeah.
that's election day, and the tradition is on election day. Was that?
We
No, it's the
cancel.
second Tuesday.
Right.
My bad. Why does my calendar say election day? Never mind. Yeah, I better change that.
Got it. All right, you good?
I'm good.
Any other item before we continue into a closed session for collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 42.30.14 subsection 4 subsection B? Hearing none. Any motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded. Oh yeah, we're done.